Welcome to Credentialing Chronicles, where we spill the doctor tea hotter than your morning coffee.
And give you the insider scoop in the wild world of credentialing, provider drama, and everything they don't teach you in med school.
I'm Shannen, and she's Nyleen, two credentialing pros with front row seats to all the chaos.
From fraud scandals to burnout breakdowns and why your favorite surgeon might actually be banned from 5 hospitals.
We got the gossip and the practical advice to keep you out of trouble and ahead of the game.
So grab your coffee, your compliance checklist, and maybe a lawyer, and let's get into it.
Welcome to Credentialing Chronicles, Episode 2, the podcast where we pull back the curtain on the world of medical credentialing, exposing the stories, the loopholes, and the shocking realities that most people never hear about. I'm Shannen.
And I'm Nyleen. Today, we're going to dive into something really disturbing, okay? So we're going to explore the case of a doctor in Florida who was recently accused, well, I guess not too recently, but anyway, was accused of possessing child pornography. And it's a case that has raised serious questions about credentialing systems, our practices in our offices as far as how we deal with our physicians and how much really they protect the public from individuals who might have access to vulnerable patients. But first, Shannen, you want to give our little disclosure?
As a disclaimer, the cases we will be sharing with you are all available through public court documents. We promise we are not sharing any privileged or private information, and we have never personally credentialed these practitioners. We will not release the names of the practitioner, but we will give you all the other juicy details. Whew, it's unbelievable, right? A doctor involved in crimes like this. It's not just about criminal actions. It's about the cracks in the system is what I think. I mean, how would they allow individuals to keep their licenses and practice without the public or hospitals knowing about their past, Nyleen? That's what I don't get.
Right. And well, it brings up the issue that we had at our last episode is because we're relying on this self-reporting and doctors talking and telling on themselves. But let's start with the case. Let's get into some tea. So we're going to talk about a doctor in Florida who was accused of possessing child pornography. The case went on for years. He was arrested in 2012. He was charged with 100 counts of possession of child pornography. And after a drawn-out 5-year legal battle, the doctor accepted a plea deal, girl. Do you know how many years he got in prison?
I'm scared to ask.
Yeah, only 4.5 years he got in state prison. This came after years of delays, including accusations that police had failed to properly turn over evidence.
And it doesn't even stop there. When I was reviewing the case with you, I had seen that the case took a darker turn when something with the lead detective, he had notarized his own signature on one of the false testimonies. Tell me what happened, because I know it even affected the prosecution.
Yeah, so apparently he was accused of notarizing his own signature on a subpoena request and then provided false testimony under oath. So then this led to credibility issues, which affected the leverage that the prosecutors had, securing a longer sentence for the doctor. So then they wanted a longer sentence. I mean, hopefully they would have gotten 5 years for each count, you would think, right? Before we get to the end of this, I want to talk a little bit about what kind of doctor he was. So what kind of doctor do you think he was?
I don't even know. A pediatrician? I don't even know.
Well, that would be the worst, right? But he was actually a urologist. Now, a urologist, sometimes people think, oh, it's just because, my dad, my grandpa had some prostate issues. Well, actually, urologists can treat children, teens, adults, and elderly. Their specialty handles all kinds of PP problems, right? So one of the problems with him being accused of child porn and convicted of child pornography is the fact that in his practice, he would have performed procedures on children, okay? Why? Let me give you an example. So if a child, for example, is born a male and they do not circumcise him, as he gets older, if he has complications with that, usually the child may be 5, 6, 7 years old. If they don't have proper hygiene, or maybe something happens, they get an infection, they may end up needing a circumcision. This doctor was performing circumcisions on children while he has some child porn. Horrible. So because of all of this that happened, in the end, the doctor received a sentence of only 4.5 years in prison. And once the sentence was served, he was supposed to leave the country within 72 hours after he got out of jail. Now, he's out of jail because I checked the criminal record, but he's out of jail. Hopefully, he's out of the country now.
Oh, my God. So he had to leave within 72 hours after his 4.5 years?
Correct.
And if the doctor doesn't comply or return to the U.S. after the sentence is over, they face 15 years of sex offender probation if he comes back?
Yeah, absolutely. And then this sentence, apparently, that was the deal that he worked out. So this probably is just on the deal that they made with him in his particular case. Because I'm assuming if you're convicted of child pornography and you stay in America, you are a registered sex offender and you have to register.
And I'm like, how does a doctor like this end up in a situation where their actions go unnoticed for so long, Nyleen? Because 2012 is when he got caught?
2012 is when he got arrested. So who knows how long he was committing these crimes for? Who knows how long if he had a life? And he was arrested as an old man. He wasn't even a young person. So God knows how long he was this sick, right? And so So this case brings up questions about how doctors who commit crimes like this are allowed to continue practicing medicine. We, as the people who are working with the physicians, we have to look for the red flags. Just because they're a doctor does not mean we have to hold them to a different standard. Unfortunately, they are human too. So the doctor in this case was once a very trusted figure in the medical community. Yet, despite the horrific nature of these charges, they were able to continue practicing for years. He continued practicing until his arrest in 2012. Nobody told him to stop practicing when the first accusations or the first hinting or the beginning of this investigation started. So really
maybe that's where the medical board should have came in of Florida and said, hey, let's just pause everything, take a little look-see daisy, right?
Well, let me give you an idea. So he had privileges at a couple hospitals in the area in Florida. And so his privileges in these hospitals, right, in Florida spanned from 1992 to 2012. So he was in all different towns in Louisiana and in Florida, practicing at all these hospitals with privileges. And if we verify those privileges, guess what they say? Doctor in good standing. That's the thing. Right. That's what's terrifying is he was practicing doing surgeries during this entire time.
And it's not even just about the criminal actions, Nyleen. It's about how the medical community, the credentialing systems are interacting with this information, right? I mean, there's a gap in the oversight is what I see. Do you agree? I mean, it allows for dangerous individuals to keep practicing in healthcare settings. And in this case, the doctor's background and professional standards didn't prevent them from engaging in criminal activities. So nor did it prevent the long delay that eventually tainted the case because they had nothing on paper, coming up with, what did we call it? The pattern of behavior.
Right. And with all those reappointments that were done every 2 years at those hospitals. Every 2 years. If the question asks, right, and he's not going to self-disclose, then what is the credentialing person to do? Right? It's a huge issue. The case was drawn out over years with motions, discovery delays, accusations. He was practicing medicine, right? Because you're innocent until proven guilty. It took almost 5 years for this case to resolve. And the legal system doesn't talk to the healthcare system, right? It's 2 separate processes that aren't necessarily communicating to each other. So it took 5 years to resolve the case. And during that time, the doctor was free on bail, which raises the question, How often do these kinds of legal battles leave professionals still able to practice, possibly endangering the patients in the meantime?
And I mean, what should we suggest? In a perfect society, something comes out, your doctor is in, the news, your doctor has been accused of something, it's playing out in a legal battle. And then, my suggestion would say it goes to the medical board. It is becoming investigated. There's some monitoring, right?
Oh,
if you can
anybody can make,
monitoring, then it's okay. Be transparent. I'm not doing anything. Come in, look. Come see, I want the patients to know. But there's also the issue, of the doctor's plea deal. They plead no contestants, which allows them to avoid a trial, right? It speeds up the legal process. The same at the hospital. They do a voluntary resignation.
Exactly.
And at the same time, it's a reminder of how some individuals may never fully be held accountable for their actions in the way that they should be. And that's, very harming to the patients, even despite all that the medical staff professionals are doing out there. Big up to the medical staff professionals. But even everything that y'all are doing out there, how do you know if there's no self-disclosure?
Right. So that's where patients also come into this, right? We want to make sure that as patients, you have the right to report incidents to the medical board. If you see or hear something, you have the ability to do that. Again, let's go back to the self-disclosure. So when we look up this doctor's license in the state of Florida, you know what shows up about his license? Nothing.
Tell me.
You know what his action is? His action is he voluntarily relinquished and left his license. That's all it says. It doesn't say he had a criminal record. It doesn't say anything. It just says, he gave up his license. Maybe he just,
So
moved.
He gave up his license and went to jail voluntarily.
Voluntarily. But again, if I was the
voluntarily.
Patient, right. So, but if he went to another state, right, and they didn't do a background check, he voluntarily relinquished his license. Anybody can voluntarily relinquish your license.
And then you go and get another one. Yes.
Exactly. So he was released. Okay, I'll give you guys the tea. He was released in 2021. So 4 years ago. Okay. So hopefully he's not living in the States anymore. But we talked about the doctor's plea deal. He pleaded no contest, There's all these legal rules that we have to go through. And then he just left the country. So he's not even a registered offender in the United States. So is this really justice, right? And then doctors like this one and others who've been involved in criminal activities, should they have to face stricter scrutiny? Hospitals and healthcare facilities need to have systems in place to ensure that this kind of behavior is caught before it reaches the point of harm.
It's not just about the public safety and the patients, also, Nyleen. It's about ensuring that the credentialing system is robust enough to catch these issues early and not just allow dangerous individuals to continue practicing based on loopholes or procedural delays. They're actively in court. 5 of their patients have, made outcries on them, and books are steadily booked up, books are booked up. So, I think that there just really needs to be a look at this. And I feel like the more attention we bring to it, I feel like it might actually have people looking at it. What do you think?
Right. We can't forget the broader implications, for credentialing, right? Doctors like this, they can slip through the system. So how do we fix it, right? Can a credentialing system that's rooted in trust and self-reporting truly protect our patients when there are just so many cracks in the system?
Yeah, that's really the tough question. On one hand, we have the rights of individuals to move on from their past mistakes. And, you get that, I get that. But when it comes to healthcare, where lives are on the line, how do we balance fairness with public safety? Again, I would say always, and I've always just found it to be very good when new doctors would come in, they'd be on a year monitoring, a 6-month monitoring, a 6-month supervision. And it was so that you got to understand how that doctor practiced. That's how it was when I was in the hospital credentialing field. You got to see that person's practice, got to formulate a good opinion, and then they would be appointed to their, 2-year rotation. Do you still see that happening maybe as a solution?
I mean, it can be, right? But then who's really doing the monitoring? Who's doing the behavior analysis? It really
is your medical director on board with this, right? I mean, that's one
right. And that you have the staff to manage that.
True,
right?
True.
And that you don't have the turnover and you don't have an issue with, your medical staff office and people are aware of policies and procedures. It's very, very niche specialty area of medical staff credentialing. And those that are doing it at the hospitals aren't usually nurses, whereas nurses are the ones who are usually involved and responsible for the peer review and the monitoring. The nurses are the ones that are dealing with the doctors on the floor. They're the ones that are dealing with them when they're dealing with patients. And if a nurse isn't aware that she has to report certain behaviors because she's scared, right? Which is the whole systemic issue that we can deal with later. So it's just very, very complicated. And ultimately, the safety of the patients should really always come first. As credentialing professionals, it's our job to make sure that those who are allowed to practice are truly above reproach.
Exactly. So what do you think? Should, doctors who are convicted of crimes like, possessing pornography, child pornography, again, like we talked about last week, assault, domestic violence, should they be allowed to continue practicing? And as the public, how do you want to be notified? Do you want to easily go to the medical board and see that there's been an issue? Should the hospitals have a page where they go? Because, hospitals are required to provide verification. And so, technically under their directory, they could say in good standing, they're being investigated. They could say that to provide that to the patient as a soft verification. They don't have to have information, but at least the patient would know, oh, it seems like Dr. Smith's having some problems this week. Maybe I don't want to see him. you know? Should we be doing more really to ensure that these kinds of cases are caught early and they don't put anyone at risk? That's really the purpose of our podcast and of us really getting this information out there. Right, Nyleen?
Yeah, absolutely. So patients. Big takeaway from today is you have the right to report your physicians. We don't want you to use that lightly. We have a lot of respect for our medical professionals, but you do have the right to report and really the responsibility to report. Just as we have the responsibility to report once we become aware of this information as medical staff professionals to the board.
And really, if you're waking up from a procedure that you didn't know you needed anesthesia from, report that. If you're coming at it, you're foggy, your clothes are just shoveled, report that. If somebody is touching on you and you didn't really think that this is a touching on you visit, report that, right? Those are things that should be reported, right? If comments are made that are, make you feel the ick, report that. Nyleen, would you say that? Like, give me an example.
At the very least, start at the office. Yeah. So at the very least, report it to that office manager, report it to the medical staff office, report it to the lead nurse, the recovery head nurse, the nurse on the floor, report it to someone, obviously, if you feel uncomfortable. If it gets more egregious and you have physical proof, then go right to the board. But if you don't feel right, report it to somebody.
Say it again, Nyleen.
I can tell you the nurses know. Okay.
They've already seen it. There's already been people before you.
The thing
Tell it again, Nyleen, the pattern of behavior.
Don't come and tell me that you work with your doctor. Once we work with physicians, we know their wives, we know their families, and I'm not going to lie and tell you that nothing falls through the cracks. But if a doctor behaves a certain way and he is disgusting, all right? Or he has a weird inclination saying, oh, I'm going to take all the peds patients and I'm going to do all their circumcisions. That's my specialty. And come on. Like, it's just, I don't know how his office, girls that were working with him or boys that were working with him didn't have any suspicions. Like, it's mind-boggling, right?
No, but I think they get in the indoctrination, right? Let's be honest, of this is a leader. This is a
Correct.
person that I'm supposed to trust. There's no way that this person could ever. And it's like, this is a human. At the end of the day, this is a human, and humans make mistakes, and humans put themselves in situations that are not always the best. And so are you putting yourself in a situation with this human that might
Correct.
not be safe, and that you're not reporting it, stopping it from happening to the next person? Those are the things that we're looking at, trying to prevent, right, Nyleen?
Right. So that's our PSA for the patients. PSA for credentialing experts. We want you guys to dig deep. It's not just about processing files. We need to make sure we're looking into doctors and checking everything that we need to check before we are letting them get on the floor, before we're getting them let into our ORs, because we never know.
I always tell us CVO staff, our processors, it's not innocent until proven guilty. It's guilty until proven innocent in credentialing. If we consider everybody to be innocent, then files are just going through you. You're not giving it an audit perspective. But if you're saying somebody in my 100 files is guilty and I just got to find it, then it becomes a different perspective. And you're like, let me find it. And then, oh my God, I found that they actually didn't report that they had an Ohio license, but I ran the FSMB, and on the FSMB, the Ohio license came up. And then I went there and I investigated, and they had board documents that were never brought to the FSMB, that they were never disclosed about. And then you guys see that. And so it really has to kind of be that mentality of these people are guilty of something. They haven't disclosed it. We got to find it.
Exactly. And we already established it's a completely separate process. We are not subject to the same criminal ideas, right? That no innocent or proven guilty. Great motto to have, Shannen. So
thank you.
PSA for the doctors. So doctors, we love you. We think you are amazing. We are here to help you. We are here to...
There are amazing doctors out there.
There are amazing doctors, and they work very, very hard, and they deal with a lot of drama, and they are definitely held sometimes too much scrutiny compared to other people. 100%. I get it. I totally get it. But please, if you have an issue like this, that it can harm your patient, or you have a sickness that needs treatment, please, for the love of God, report yourself and get the help that you need, and don't put your oath at risk and what you've sworn to do. So at the end of the day, guys, let us know your thoughts. You can reach us out on Instagram at Cred Chronicles and email us at credentialingchronicles.com. We want to hear what you got to say.
We do. And as always, if you want to check out your doctor's background, we'll drop some links in the show notes to help you navigate state medical boards. And really, if you reach out to us on Instagram, we want to know what, Nyleen? Tell us your stories. We want to hear your stories, and we'll do some investigation. And who knows, your story might be one of our episodes. We're so excited.
Absolutely. So just remember, credentialing professionals have the difficult task of balancing fairness, patient safety, and hospital liability. But it's up to all of us to make sure we're doing everything to keep the healthcare system safe.
Exactly. And as we said before, doctors, we love you. We understand that you're human. And we understand that professionally, you don't want to call out all the doctors. So if you have some tea, send it to us. We'll call them out for you, okay? And then you don't have to call them out, and it'll be all privileged and confidential information. Because we want to make sure, especially the criminal people, the bad actors, as Nyleen likes to call them, they can have career-ending consequences. Some recover and some don't. And it all depends on how they handle the fallout and how they disclose, right? And so really, that's what matters.
Exactly. So what do you think? Should an arrest always ruin a doctor's career, or do second chances matter? Let us know.
Let us know. Bye. Whoo, that was a lot of tea. Who knew doctors had more drama than reality TV?
And if you think that was wild, just wait till next week. We've got more stories, more scandals, and more credentialing chaos coming your way.
Hit that follow button, and don't forget, just because they have an MD doesn't mean they have a clean record.
See you next time on Credentialing Chronicles. Stay credentialed, not canceled.